Hello and welcome back to Deck Tech Tuesday. My name is Owen, and today we're going over a blue-white control deck, or as I like to call it, Jace's brain. Without further ado, let's get started. So this is a pretty old-fashioned control deck, lots of spells and few big finishers. So to start the spells, we're running one copy of Myth Realized. This is our only one drop, and it's just something to do early on in the game where we aren't doing much except casting spells. It can also be another win condition, which every control deck really wants. Onto the 2-drops, we're running 4 copies of Take Inventory. Now this is a great card for us, and is one of my favorite cards from the new set Eldritch Moon. It can usually be a 2-mana, draw 1 or 2 cards, but in the late game, which we do go to a lot, it can be a 2-mana, draw 3 to 4 cards, and that is great to refill our hand. The next 2-drop we're running are 3 copies of Blessed Alliance, a very versatile card, especially against aggro decks. Usually used as early game removal and can also gain us some life. The next 2-drop is 2 copies of Gideon's Reproach. It's just early game removal, but also in the slot you could easily play 2 copies of Desolation in Stone. Our last 2-drop are 2 copies of Anticipate, a good card that replaces itself nicely and can also find us our finishers in the late game. On to the 3-drops, starting with 1 copy of Grip of the Royal. A nice spell to slow down creatures for 2 combat steps and letting us draw a card. It is usually also just 2 mana with its surge cost. Our next 3-drop are 3 copies of Scatter to the Winds. Our only cheap counterspell, but can also be a win condition sometimes, but it is most likely just going to be a counterspell early on in the game. On to the 4-drops, starting with 2 copies of Comparative Analysis. It's normally just going to be a 3-drop with a surge cost, but it is also a nice card to use with Brain in a Jar. Our next 4-drop is a single copy of Summary Dismissal. Another one of our counterspells. It is basically the dada or mama of all counterspells in Standard, virtually countering anything and everything. Our last 4-drop is a pair of Allied Reinforcements. A nice card to create blockers, and is also another 4-drop for Brain in a Jar. Instead of playing this card, you could also run 2 copies of Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. On to the 5-drops, starting with 1 copy of Planar Outburst. Another win condition, and is a nice board wipe to have in a control deck. Our only other 5-drop is a copy of Confirmed Suspicions. Our last counterspell, and is also a nice way of card advantage. It also has a good synergy with Tamio's Journal. On to the artifacts, which we are running a few of, starting with 3 copies of Brain in a Jar. A really fun card in the deck, casting free spells and later in the game scrying a lot. Next, we're running 1 copy of Tamio's Journal. It's a good late game card and can search for any game winner, but it can also draw us cards. One enchantment I forgot about was a copy of Mind's Dilation. A very fun card to cast free spells, and in a very lucky situation can also be a game winner. Now on to the creatures, starting with 2 copies of Curious Homunculus. It's kind of another Brain in a Jar, but later in the game can win us the game and also has a type like a Jace's Sanctum type ability. Our only other creature in the deck is 1 copy of Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. Our best game winner, and probably the best game winner in the entire state of Standard at the moment. And we do get to 10 mana a lot later in the game with all the cards we're drawing earlier on in the game. Lastly, we're running 2 copies of Jace Unraveler of Secrets. It's a good mid to late game card, and it is also card advantage that can bounce creatures. Here's the mana base on the screen. 1 copy of Nephalia Academy, Meandering River, and Bladed Cataract. 4 Evolving Wilds that can search up either one of the 9 islands or one of the 11 plains. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's Deck Tech Tuesday. I think this deck is pretty competitive right now. I did try it out at Friday Night Magic last night, and I did go 3-1, and if you count a match where I played before it actually started, I went 4-1. I hope you liked it, and I hope you also have a great day. See you next week.